dude is hustling hard. Brent Faiyaz.
Here with Brent Faiyaz.
Brent Faiyaz.
Special guest, Brent Faiyaz.
Brent Faiyaz. The one and the only Brent Faiyaz. Brent Faiyaz was born Christopher Brentwood on September 19, 1995 in New York City. His family moved to Columbia, Maryland, a city about 20 miles outside of Baltimore, when he was still really young. So I want to say he basically grew up there. He said being from Maryland played a big role in everything he does, from how he walks, talks, and creates his music. Brent said music was always a part of his early life. He said as far back as he can remember, music was there. Brent said his first favorite song he can remember, I think it might have been I Wanna Know by Joe. He said, I remember I used to be 3 or 4 in the backseat in the car singing that every time it came on the radio. That was my song. He talked about a time when he was a little kid, when he had gotten this first little play keyboard. He said he got a toy keyboard when he was around 5 or 6. Brent said he'd really be playing with it. And you know how kids usually are. They'll be on a little toy for like 5 seconds and then go do something else. But he said it was different for him. He said he would just sit there and mess with it and press all the buttons and the different instruments and just do that all day long. He talked about music influences, and he said there were a lot of music influences when he was coming up. He did say his first CD he ever bought, I think it was The Diary of Alicia Keys. And that was the first album he ever bought with his own money. He said he had a little Discman, and his favorite song from that album was Diary. He was around 7, and he said that song was blowing his mind. When Brent was talking about his musical influences, he said a lot of the influences came from his mom and what she was playing. She was big on R&B. He'd hear Lauryn Hill, Luther Vandross, Anita Baker, and all that great stuff. Then he spoke about, on the flip side, his older brother was heavy into rap. So he was listening to G-Unit and Ludacris. Brent said he got influenced by him too. Something interesting I found out was Brent's dad's actually Dominican. I'm not sure if he's like from DR, the island, but I do know he's definitely Dominican. Meaning, I don't know if he was born there, but he is Dominican.
Well, I initially wanted to do the album in DR, just simply because that's where my lineage is from my father's side. I never spent much time out there. I didn't grow up speaking Spanish or nothing like that. So I went out to the DR just to take that little trip. So
it made me wonder, his pop's from New York, and that's why he was born there? Because there's a huge Dominican community in the city, and it is a very, very large community up in Washington Heights, LES, all different areas, to be honest with you. There's such a mix, and there's so much pride in that culture. It's just such a beautiful thing. So I thought it was kind of crazy because I've been hearing Brent's music for a while now, and I never knew that about him. When Brent was talking about his parents, he said he always had his dad in his life. He said his pops was a different type of guy. He talked about the way his dad was with him growing up. Brent said if he went to his pops and was like, yo, in school everybody keeps clowning me with these shoes I got on. Everybody keeps dogging them. I don't want to wear these shoes no more. His father would be like, forget them. Very simple. Don't care. Because of this advice, Brent started to realize more and more that he really didn't have to care about what other people were doing. He was reminded you can just be an individual. He didn't have to fit into any category that anybody tried to put him in. He said it was a very competitive area where he grew up because there were a lot of different schools and sports teams, and that definitely played a role in some of his developing a strong drive. He talked about DC being an environment where people really paid attention to fashion and style. People were always cracking jokes on what other people had on. This was a big part of why Brent became so interested in fashion. Brent said he's not really into big brand names and things like that, as long as it looked cool.
I was like voted best dressed in high school. That was like my thing. It's more so just how I feel. Like if I feel a certain type of way, I'm gonna throw on a certain jacket or a certain pair of shoes or whatever, but I'm too big on like brands or whatever.
I thought that was really dope and really refreshing to hear, because the truth is, style is not about how expensive a brand is. Really, if a fit is fresh, it's just fresh. And it's so nice to have someone who's somewhat of a tastemaker share this feeling, because it gives everybody another perspective on fashion. Like, just because you can't afford the $1,200 Balenciagas or Louis V's, you can still be fly. And I believe we need to hear more of that to balance out what we see in mainstream entertainment. I found out that Brent eventually took on the name Faiyaz from a Muslim friend who told him the word means artist in Arabic. I thought that was super interesting. Brent went on to say he started really getting involved with music when he was around 12 years old. He was really getting into producing at this time and writing. Faiyaz said that Lauryn Hill had a huge influence on him musically. I thought that was really interesting because he speaks a lot about how initially he was more into rapping. And if you know anything about the legend Miss Lauryn Hill, she rapped a lot too, but she'd also switch it up and sing like nobody's business. She was really a beast at both. So I feel like that definitely had to play a role in him being open to singing too. And that's the lane he eventually got into. So Brent said when he started recording when he was 12, he and his brother Juan had a little USB mic and some downloaded software. They started a label for fun and sold their music in school. He said his mom was always a big music listener. She and his older brother Tez collected so many CDs. Brent said he'd snatch them from any and everywhere in the house and listen to them. Eventually, Brent started collecting his own. When he was asked what was the most influential song of his childhood, he said too many to name honestly. He said he always kept around 4 albums in rotation since he was about 7, but he said it probably was something by Michael Jackson though. What's really interesting is what Brent shared in one of his interviews. He mentioned his parents weren't really supportive of the music thing. It seemed like he wasn't the best student in school. I'm not sitting here and telling you school is bad or good. It's just that it's not the end all be all. And Brent is a perfect example that what he was doing was special. So learning and hearing this gave me a little bit more insight on songs like Home. On the intro, it starts with his mom's kind of yelling at him.
Chris!
I'm coming.
Bring your ass downstairs so we can discuss this report card. Please explain to me how the you go to school every single day and then bring home all Fs? What are you doing all day?
He said, when I was young, like 13, 14, 15, I was really into the cool kids. They were a group, or I guess you can call them a duo, but it was 2 guys, Sir Michael Rocks and Chuck English. Brent said he felt like they didn't care. They made music about not caring. They made music about people clowning their clothes, and they were like, I don't care, I still get more girls than you. And that's kind of how he approached high school. He said his grades were crappy and he couldn't play ball because his grades were crappy, so I'm gonna just be fly. Brent said his most embarrassing high school moment would have to be failing the 9th grade because everyone knew about it. He ended up graduating on time from taking night school, but he had to be in an English class with everyone younger than him. Brent said the lack of support his parents had for his music would have probably been different if he were to pursue music while he was doing good in school and doing things for his parents to be proud of, and music was a side thing. He went on to say, now that I think about it, the whole reason I was so bad in school was probably because I always knew I was gonna do music. I didn't want to do schoolwork, but I was like, I can do this. I always think situations like that are interesting because it says a lot about your character and belief. Because to be that young without your parents supporting what you like and to stick with it says so much. You know, a lot of us are very impressionable when we're that young. And many times people let their parents talk them out of pursuing things they feel passionate about because it's not seen as something you can attain. And you know, in most cases, parents just want what's best for their child. They want you to have a stable job and be able to take care of yourself. But because of this limited way of thinking, they could potentially kill their child's dream, which could have been life-changing for not only them, but for generations to come. So hearing that part of his story really gave me an even deeper respect for him and what he does. Around this time, he was in high school. Brent had began self-releasing his music. Projects like Sunset Ave and 2013's or 2014's Black Child EP aren't easy to find on the internet anymore. But if you can get your hands on them, you'll hear a teenage Faiyaz leaning more toward rapping than singing and developing his production skills. Brent and his family moved from Maryland to Charlotte, North Carolina around the time he graduated high school at age 17. Though he was hesitant about the move at first, he soon realized time away from his friends sparked his work ethic. I guess it was like one of those things where when you move to a new place, you don't really know anybody, so it's kind of like less distractions, right? Can't really just be hanging out because you don't really know anybody or where the spots are, like what's poppin'. So it seems like it was like a bit of a blessing for him probably. I'm sure it was probably a little easier for him to focus. He was living with his parents for a little bit when they first got to North Carolina, but he said he was making too much noise and eventually had to move out. So once he got out on his own, he worked at a grocery store called Harris Teeter, and he worked at Dunkin' Donuts too. Brent said his customers would come just for his iced vanilla lattes.
By the way, I got mad love for people I used to work for too. Everybody over there at Dunkin' Donuts, at Harris Teeter, mad love. People used to come there and just ask for my vanilla chai, for real.
which is pretty funny. Harris Teeter was like a grocery store out there in Charlotte, I think. So Brent said he would spend most of his days working, and then once he was out of work at night, he dedicated a majority of his time to cooking up music, of course. And then, as time passed, he eventually made some friends who were in the streets. So just kind of based off the sentiment of what he said between, doing little jobs like those and seeing the path of some of his friends were headed, he kind of realized that wasn't the life he wanted. It feels like he knew he wanted more for himself than that.
I used to work at a grocery store. And this is around the same time, first world problems and records about me, washing my work clothes in the sink, stuff like that. This around that same time. And I remember going back and forth. I was working in LA on the music that a lot of people are listening to now, and still going back home and then working my regular job. So I'm sitting, I'm playing junks this music that's about to go crazy. And they don't really understand how lit niggas is about to be. I'm telling you,
I'm gonna be someone to know soon.
Yeah, I'm in my work uniform, listen, I'm trying to tell you, I'm about to be really lit. I know a lot of niggas, I'm doing a lot of cool things. I don't flex it, but this is something that I'm telling you, you know what I'm saying? So a lot of people don't really see it at the time.
But he did say he was learning how life works and who he wanted to be. He said, I was doing music while working and just figuring it out. It schooled me a lot about the game, musically too. So on to his first project. His first project featured him mostly as a rapper, which is what he initially was doing, not singing. It was called Black Child EP. I think you can still find it if you check on SoundCloud. Some people compared it to what Bryson Tiller was doing at that time, since he was kind of giving sort of introspective bars over soulful type beats, just minus the singing. For it being his first sort of release, he gained a pretty good amount of streams. And so it was around this time while he was working at Harris Teeter when he met his business partner and now manager Ty Bazin. Born and raised in Atlanta, Ty has worked behind the scenes for years as an artist manager. But prior to connecting with Brent, all of his previous acts were more on some rap stuff than anything R&B. After reaching a point of exhaustion with that side of the game, his sights turned to R&B and his thoughts turned to action when he discovered Brent's SoundCloud in 2014. The 3 years after the two connected and began mapping out how they would approach the music industry, a lot occurred. Label meetings, proposals, letdowns. Brent started to really want to figure out the business side of the game, so he would spend hours of studying hip-hop's greatest businessmen, like Master P, Jay-Z, Diddy, and more. Ty Bazin said, by the time I met Brent, he had tried all the tricks in the world to get a deal. All the tricks. One time he even acted as an A&R to get a blog to post his music. This was when he was 16 and rapping. At 19, when they first met, he had a job in his own apartment in Charlotte, North Carolina. He was making sandwiches at a grocery store. Brent said, I met Ty when he hit me on Twitter DM and was like, yo, I like your music. You need to stop rapping though. Take down the rap stuff if you want to work. So I'm like, who's this guy DMing me out of nowhere telling me how I should go about my music? We got into talking, he was getting me premieres, and I was like, it's not moving anyway. The music is not doing no numbers. He's the only person that reached out to me on some management. I was already getting tired rapping because there was a whole lot of writing in a short space.
And I had never really had nobody reach out, to manage me or take my career to the next level. And the one manager I got now was one of the first managers to ever reach out and say he really wanted to work with me, you feel me? He was like, man, first thing you need to do is stop all that rapping shit. I was like, what you mean? You feel me? Like, I'm a rapper. He was like, nah, bro, there's too many rappers out here.
Brent said you could spend 2 or 3 days writing a rap song and only get one verse. So I thought, you know what? I can sing. Let me focus on that. It was easier for me to sing than it was to rap. It was more natural. Ty said right away, once he realized how Brent was living, it showed him he understood the importance of paying your bills and having your own place. He was self-sufficient. His job at the time was demanding because he wasn't making a lot of money, so he had to work a lot to pay his rent. It would take Brent 3 or 4 months to send Ty one song. He had to record it, make the beat, mix it, and do the artwork. It took him like 6 months just to get 2 records done. In January 2015, Brent released his debut single called Allure. It was around this time when Brent made the decision to fully switch from rapping to singing. He said it was mostly because of his manager Ty. He was doing both on his Lauryn Hill vibe, I guess. He said he felt like there's so many rappers out. I remember sending music around, sending emails all day, every day for damn near 2 years. Nobody was really giving me the response I wanted. The thing is, because it's so many rappers, if I'm not referred by somebody, it's like they won't even listen. Versus singing, somebody can press play and like 3 seconds in, you might be somebody's favorite singer off one song. Rapping was kind of hard. It's so many words. When you sing, you can kind of stretch the words out. I didn't have to write as much as everybody else. You don't want to hear a whole catalog. It was a no-brainer. His voice and his writing style was coming across so unique and authentic that it was being received very well by the small audience he was beginning to build. Brent also went on to release DSN the summer of that year, which both songs currently sit with over 1 million streams each. Brent flew out to Los Angeles the first time in August 2015. The second was that October around Halloween. That's when he said, "Forget this. I'm about to quit this job." Ty had to tell him, "Hold up, put in a leave of absence. That way, you can come out to LA, and if this doesn't work out and you have to go back home, you got your job." While residing on the East Coast, Faiyaz would travel to Los Angeles for meetings with his new manager. Baisden connected Brent with producers D-Pat and Atu, who are signed to Culture's, Baisden's company, publishing house, to form the group Sonder, resulting in his first mixtape. Once Brent got to LA and started recording with the community of people we built, his productivity increased immediately. Brent recorded Too Fast, Crew, Poison, No One Knows, Insecure, and the whole Sonder project all after moving, some of his most well-known songs. Finally, in January 2016, the young R&B singer moved to Los Angeles. No contracts or deals on the table, just money from his savings and a tax return. Once in LA and on his feet, Ty began sending Brent's music to different publishers. The main goal was to get a pub deal before I look at record label proposals. He sent his music to one publisher with the intention of her just listening to it, to see what she thought. That was at the end of February or the top of March. To his surprise, she said, "I would love to meet him, I want to sign him." They did the deal in May with Ashley Calhoun and Pulse Music Group. By May, Faiyaz and Baisden were able to secure that publishing deal with Pulse Music Group. Ty stated his number one priority in regards to Brent's career was to provide him the ability to solely focus on music while still being able to take care of himself. I thought that spoke volumes on his character. With the money they made from the Pulse deal, they both split a portion and put the rest back into the business. Although it was nowhere near the huge record deals we hear about these days, they did it in such a strategic way that they knew betting on themselves would soon pay off once the music really took off. They were very smart and brave to take the path they did because they did receive other offers from some big labels, but the thing that comes with those types of offers is not always in the artist's best interests.
I always said it was never about the money. It was always about the terms. I look at everything from 100% of a pie. So when people say, well, industry standard for a new artist is a 18% royalty, and they're gonna say 18% royalty is very high, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, 18% out of 100?
The pie can be split in many different ways, and both Brent and Ty felt they would be receiving the short end of the stick in all of the label deals they were offered. So they decided to bet on themselves. They started their own company, Lost Kids LLC, and put their boots on the ground. Brent released multiple projects under the collective Sonder, which played a pivotal role in garnering a strong fan base. And then in October of 2017, Brent decided it was time to step out on his own, and he dropped his debut solo album titled Sonder's Son. It was yet another stamp on the already still semi-new, yet well-regarded singer's resume. His name was starting to become more known amongst many of the music industry's tastemakers. It's this sense of individuality and confidence that is at the foundation of Brent's music and work ethic, and perhaps why he has gained such widespread traction so quickly. With only a couple of tracks and an EP to his name, he started seeing regular play on OVO Sound Radio, and he did his first live performance in LA, opening for Amir Obey in the summer of 2016. Andre 3000 was in attendance, specifically to see and speak to Brent. Brent said the fact that he called me over and was like, "Hey man, your live show is amazing. It made me look at it like it was a lot more realistic," Brent said. 2017 was also when he was featured on one of his biggest songs to date, Crew, featuring fellow DMV natives Go Link, Shy Glizzy, and none other than Gucci Mane himself. The song was nominated for a Grammy and has gone, I think, like 5 times platinum. This was a great look for Brent since it brought a lot of eyes to him of people who didn't know who he was and they wanted to find out about him. This also afforded him his first opportunity to perform on Coachella. He kept up his momentum heading into 2018 by announcing his first headline tour. He would then cap the year with yet another solid body of work titled Lost. Lost featured one of his fans' favorite songs, Trust.
You told me I could trust you. Don't lie.
It's such a banger. In 2019, Brent didn't release too much music, but he couldn't go a whole year without at least one banger, so he did drop Rehab.
I've been thinking about you as real as they come,
which is still a fan favorite till this day. I believe he didn't drop too much music because he was working on creating his forthcoming project, which was slated to drop the following year. He dropped FTW in July 2020 and fans weren't disappointed. Brent's managed to stay so true to himself that his fans seem to really appreciate that he doesn't sound like anyone else, and that's so refreshing. Fast forward to present day 2022, and Brent Faiyaz has solidified himself as a force within the music industry. He just dropped his most recent project titled Wasteland, and once again, he didn't disappoint. I believe Brent is a great example of staying true to yourself, and that's why his music resonates so well with his fan base. He's such a great example of why you don't have to follow the trends or do what it looks like everyone else is doing. Brent's had so much success in such a short period of time. It's exciting to see what new heights he's gonna reach moving forward. I can't wait to see what the future holds for him and how much he will continue to grow as an artist, in his music, and as a businessman. So I just want to say thank you guys for watching, and please let me know what you thought about Brent's come up. Was there anything you found out about him that you didn't know before? And was there anything interesting about him that stood out to you and spoke to you? And please let me know what your overall feelings are on the come up, and if you want to see more of this type of content. I'll be back with some more for you guys soon, and I wish you all peace and blessings.